Commander Jake Martinez walked across the bridge of the exploration ship UEC Frontier and looked out at the stars. 3 months had passed since they left Earth to map new systems in this part of space. The crew was getting tired, but they still had work to do. Jake checked the time on his watch and saw it was almost the end of his shift. The bridge was quiet except for the soft sounds of computers working. Most of the crew was either sleeping or eating dinner in the mess hall. Only a few people stayed on duty during the night shift. Jake liked these quiet times because it gave him a chance to think about home and his family back on Earth. Park sat at the communication station and watched her screens. She had been monitoring space traffic and background noise for hours. Nothing unusual had happened all day. Then something strange appeared on her screen. A weak signal was coming from somewhere far away. It was not like anything she had seen before. "Sir, I have something weird here," Lisa called out to Jake. She adjusted her headset and turned up the volume on her equipment. "There is a signal coming in on multiple frequencies. It does not match anything in our database." Jake walked over to Lisa's station and looked at her screens. The signal was very weak, but it was definitely there. It came in short bursts with long pauses between them. The pattern looked like someone was trying to send a message, but the signal was too far away to understand clearly. "Can you clean it up?" Jake asked. He watched as Lisa typed commands into her computer and tried different filters to make the signal stronger. "I am trying, but it is very faint," Lisa said. She worked for several minutes adjusting settings and running the signal through different programs. "Wait, I think I am getting something. This does not sound human, sir." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all the years humans had been exploring space, they had never found signs of intelligent alien life. There were many planets with plants and simple animals, but no advanced civilizations. If this signal really came from aliens, it would change everything. "Put it on the main speakers," Jake ordered. He pressed a button on his chair that would wake up Captain Amy Rodriguez in her quarters. If this was what he thought it was, she needed to know right away. The bridge filled with strange sounds that definitely did not come from any human source. The sounds had a musical quality, but also seemed urgent and desperate. Lisa continued working on her computer to try to understand what the sounds meant. Captain Rodriguez arrived on the bridge within 5 minutes. She was still putting on her uniform jacket as she walked quickly to Jake's side. Her gray hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes were alert and focused. "What do we have?" she asked Jake while looking at the screens around Lisa's station. "Unknown. Signal from an alien source," Jake replied. "Lisa has been trying to decode it for the past 20 minutes. Captain Rodriguez sat down in her command chair and listened to the strange sounds coming from the speakers. She had commanded ships for over 20 years, but this was completely new. The training manuals had prepared her for many situations. But first contact with aliens was mostly theory. "How far away is the signal coming from?" she asked Lisa. "Based on the signal strength and delay, I estimate about 47 light years from our current position," Lisa answered. "The signal is very old by the time it reaches us. Whatever sent this message did it almost 50 years ago." Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived on the bridge carrying her portable computer and analysis equipment. She was the ship's expert on languages and communication. If anyone could figure out what the aliens were trying to say, it would be her. "I heard the alert," Elena said as she set up her equipment next to Lisa's station. "Let me hear what we have." Elena listened to the alien sounds for several minutes while her computer ran analysis programs. She had studied every human language and many animal communication systems. This was different from anything she had encountered before. "The pattern suggests they are trying to communicate something urgent," Alana said after studying the data. "There are repeated sequences that could be words or concepts." "Give me some time. and I might be able to build a basic translation matrix. 4. The next 3 hours, Elena worked on decoding the alien message, while Jake and Captain Rodriguez waited. The rest of the bridge crew was called in early to help with the analysis. Chief Engineer Paul Thompson arrived to check if the signal could be affecting their ship's systems. "I have something," Elena announced just before dawn, according to ship time. Her computer had been processing the alien sounds and comparing them to mathematical and logical patterns. "The message is definitely a distress call." Everyone on the bridge gathered around Elena's station as she explained what she had discovered. The alien sounds contained basic mathematical concepts that allowed her computer to start understanding their language. Once it learned some basic words, it could guess at the meaning of other parts. "They call themselves the Vellani," Elena continued. "Their home world is under attack by something they call the hegemony. They are asking for help from anyone who can receive their message." Captain Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. The Vellani were facing destruction and had sent out a desperate plea for help to anyone in the galaxy who might be listening. A message had traveled through space for almost 50 years before reaching the frontier. "What else can you tell me about their situation?" Captain Rodriguez asked Elena. Elena continued working on her translation while she talked. More of the message became clear as her computer learned the Vellani language. The story that emerged was frightening. The hegemony appears to be a large military force that conquers other civilizations, Elena said. According to this message, they have already destroyed dozens of worlds. The Vellani say they have maybe 3 days left before their final defenses fall. 3 days, 50 years ago, Jake pointed out. Whatever happened to them is already over. Captain Rodriguez stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. She looked out at the stars and thought about the implications of what they had discovered. Somewhere in this galaxy was a force powerful enough to destroy entire civilizations. The Vellani might be gone, but the hegemony could still be out there. "Plot a course for the Vellani system," she ordered Navigator Chris Johnson. "Captain, that will take us far outside our authorized exploration zone," Jake warned. "Earth Command will want to know why we changed course." "Send a full report back to Earth," Captain Rodriguez said. "Tell them everything we have discovered. Tell them we are going to investigate." Paul Thompson looked worried. "Captain, we are just one exploration ship. If this hegemony force is as powerful as the message suggests, we would not be able to help even if the Vellani are still alive." Captain Rodriguez understood Paul's concerns, but she had made her decision. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of finding other intelligent life in the universe. Now they had found evidence of it, and that life had asked for help. "We have to try," she said. "We cannot ignore a plea for help just because it might be dangerous. If the situation was reversed, I would want someone to answer our call." "Chris." Johnson began calculating the hyperspace jump to the Vellani system. It would take the frontier several days to reach their destination. During that time, they could continue analyzing the alien message and prepare for whatever they might find. The crew worked through the night preparing for the journey. Everyone understood they were about to make history. They would be the first humans to visit an alien world. They might also be flying into the middle of a war zone, controlled by an enemy they knew nothing about. As the frontier prepared to jump to hyperspace, Captain Rodriguez made one final log entry. She recorded everything. They had learned about the Vellani and the hegemony. If something happened to her ship, at least Earth would know what they had discovered. The stars stretched into lines as the frontier entered hyperspace and began its journey toward the unknown. Behind them, their message raced back toward Earth, at the speed of light, carrying news that would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The U's frontier dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vellani system, and what the crew saw made them sick to their stomachs. The alien homeworld hung in space like a burning jewel, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been a beautiful civilization. Massive ships filled the space around the planet, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge and watched the destruction through the main viewer. Pieces of destroyed space stations drifted in slow orbits around the planet. Some fragments were as large as city blocks. The debris field was so thick that it looked like a deadly metal ring circling the world. "How many enemy ships do you count?" she asked navigator Chris Johnson. Chris worked at his station for several minutes, using the ship's sensors to identify individual targets among the chaos. "I count over 200 large vessels in the immediate area," he reported. "There are also smaller ships moving between them. The total could be over 500 ships." Dr. Elena Vasquez had set up her equipment to monitor communications from the planet's surface. Most of what she heard was encrypted hegemony, military traffic, but occasionally she picked up weaker signals that seemed to come from the Velani themselves. "Velani are still alive," Elena announced with relief in her voice. "I am detecting transmissions from underground locations across the planet. They appear to be hiding in bunker systems beneath their cities." Lieutenant Sam Torres was the ship's tactical officer, and he was studying the enemy vessels through the Frontier's long-range sensors. What he saw worried him greatly. Each hegemony ship was armed with weapons that could destroy the Frontier with a single shot. "Captain, these ships are built for one purpose," Sam reported. "They are designed to completely destroy resistance through overwhelming firepower. I estimate each of their main battleships carries more weapons than our entire Earth fleet combined." Captain Rodriguez knew they needed more information before they could make any decisions. The Frontier was designed for exploration, not combat. Against this many enemy ships, they would last maybe 30 seconds in a direct fight. "Take us to the far side of the system," she ordered Chris. "Keep us hidden behind that large moon. We need to study the situation before we do anything else." The Frontier moved carefully through the outer system, staying far away from the hegemony fleet. Chief Engineer Paul Thompson had shut down all non-essential systems to reduce their energy signature. If the enemy detected them now, they would have no chance to escape. Elena continued working on decoding Velani transmissions while the ship hid behind the moon. Her translation program was getting better at understanding their language as it processed more data. The messages she intercepted painted a picture of desperate resistance against impossible odds. "The Velani have been fighting for over 3 months, Elena reported. "The hegemony fleet arrived and immediately began destroying everything in orbit. The Velani military tried to fight back, but they were completely outmatched." "What about their government?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "Are their leaders still alive?" "Yes, their primary leadership is hiding in a deep bunker beneath their capital city," Elena said. "They are trying to coordinate resistance efforts, but most of their military forces have been destroyed." Dr. Elena managed to establish a weak communication link with the Velani leadership. The process took hours because she had to be very careful not to let the hegemony forces detect the transmission. When the connection finally worked, the first alien voice ever heard by humans came through the ship's speakers. The Velani leader's voice sounded tired and desperate, even through the translation system. Elena had programmed the computer to convert the alien sounds into words humans could understand. The conversation that followed would change everything. "Unknown vessel, we detect your transmission," the Velani leader said. "Are you from the species that sent ships to our system?" Elena looked at Captain Rodriguez with confusion. "What ships?" Elena asked through the communication link. "The ships that arrived 2 days ago," the Velani leader replied. "Large vessels with similar energy signatures to yours. They engaged the hegemony fleet and destroyed several enemy ships before withdrawing." Captain Rodriguez felt her heart pound with excitement. Other human ships were already here. Earth Command must have received their message and sent a fleet to investigate. But how had they arrived so quickly? "We are humans from the exploration vessel Frontier," Elena transmitted back. "Can you tell us more about these other ships?" "They appeared suddenly and attacked the hegemony formation, guarding our industrial orbital stations," the Vellani leader explained. "The unknown ships used tactics we had never seen before. They coordinated their attacks perfectly and disabled hegemony vessels much larger than themselves." Elena continued the conversation while Sam Torres used the ship's sensors to look for any sign of other human vessels in the system. He found traces of recent weapons fire and ship exhaust, but no active human ships. "Where are these ships now?" Elena asked the Vellani leader. "They withdrew to the outer system after the attack," came the reply. "We believe they are preparing for another strike. The hegemony commanders have increased their patrols and changed their defensive formations." "Captain." Rodriguez realized the situation was more complicated than she had thought. If other human ships were conducting guerrilla attacks against the hegemony fleet, the Frontier might be able to help coordinate a larger rescue effort. "We need to find our people," she told Chris. "Start scanning the outer system for human energy signatures." While Chris searched for the other human ships, Elena continued talking with the Vellani leader and learned more about their civilization and the hegemony threat. The information was both fascinating and terrifying. The Vellani were a peaceful species that had achieved spaceflight only a few hundred years earlier. They had explored nearby star systems and established small colonies, but had never encountered hostile aliens before. Their technology was advanced in some areas, but they had never developed powerful military weapons. The hegemony was completely different. According to the Vellani, they were an empire that had been conquering star systems for decades. They followed a simple strategy: complete surrender or total destruction. Species that submitted were enslaved and forced to work in hegemony mines and factories. Those that resisted were eliminated entirely. "How many civilizations have they conquered?" Elena asked. "Our intelligence suggests they control 47 star systems," the Vellani leader replied. "Each conquest makes them stronger as they force the survivors to build more ships and weapons for their fleet." Elena felt sick as she realized the scale of the threat. The hegemony was not just attacking the Vellani. They were building an empire by destroying everyone who opposed them. If they were not stopped, they could eventually threaten Earth itself. "Can you tell us about their military capabilities?" Helena asked. "This information would be crucial for any human rescue mission. Their technology focuses on overwhelming force rather than innovation," the Vellani leader explained. "Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy a city. They rely on fear and superior numbers to win battles quickly." Sam Torres had been analyzing the hegemony fleet composition while Elena talked with the Vellani. He was building a database of enemy ship types and capabilities that would be vital for planning any military response. "Captain, I think I understand their strategy," Sam reported. "The hegemony ships are designed for siege warfare against planetary targets. They excel at destroying fixed defenses, but their formations are not optimized for fighting mobile opponents." This explained how the other human ships had been able to attack successfully and then escape. The hegemony was used to fighting enemies who stood still and tried to defend fixed positions. They were not prepared for hit-and-run tactics. "There," Chris announced suddenly. "I have found them." On the main screen, 3 human destroyers appeared from behind an asteroid field in the outer system. They were running silent with most systems shut down to avoid detection. Captain Rodriguez recognized the ships immediately from their design. "Those are Terran Defense Force vessels," she said with relief. "Earth Command did receive our message." Elena transmitted coordinates to the hidden human ships and arranged a meeting in the shadow of a large asteroid. Within 6 hours, Captain Rodriguez found herself face to face with Commander Kate Stevens of the TDF destroyer Vigilant. "Captain Rodriguez, we have been waiting for you," Commander Stevens said as she came aboard the Frontier. "Earth Command. Received your message about the alien distress signal. We were ordered to investigate and assess the threat level." "What is the situation back home?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "The entire planet is mobilizing," Stevens replied with a grim smile. "Every nation is contributing ships and resources to what they are calling the Terra Fleet. Admiral Helen Stone is assembling the largest military force in human history." Captain Rodriguez felt hope for the first time since arriving in the Vallani system. Humanity was coming to help. The question was whether they would arrive in time to save the Vallani civilization. "How long before the main fleet arrives?" she asked. 2 weeks at most," Stevens replied. "But we cannot wait that long. Our analysis suggests the Vallani have maybe 5 days left before their final defenses collapse." Admiral Kevin Walsh stood in the main operations center of Earth Command headquarters and watched as reports flooded in from every military installation on the planet. 6 hours had passed since Captain Rodriguez's message about the alien distress. Call reached Earth. In those 6 hours, the world had changed completely. President Lisa Carter had called an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council within 2 hours of receiving the transmission. Representatives from every major nation sat in the council chamber and listened as Admiral Walsh explained what humanity had discovered in the Kepler 442 system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer alone in the universe," Admiral Walsh had told the assembled leaders. "Unfortunately, our first contact with alien intelligence has revealed the existence of a threat that could eventually reach Earth itself." The reaction was immediate and unanimous. Every nation on Earth pledged full military support for what President Carter called the Terra Fleet. Within hours, defense contractors around the world received orders to convert every available vessel. For military use, Colonel Susan Hayes coordinated the massive mobilization effort from her command center in Colorado. She had spent 20 years planning for potential alien contact scenarios, but none of the war games had prepared her for the reality of organizing a planetary defense force in less than 2 weeks. "How many ships can we deploy?" Admiral Walsh asked during their first planning meeting. "If we include everything from military destroyers to converted cargo vessels, we can field approximately 800 ships," Colonel Hayes replied. "That includes vessels from the American, European, Chinese, Russian, and Brazilian space forces." Dr. Marcus Cole arrived at Earth Command carrying classified files from the Advanced Weapons Research Division. His team had been developing experimental military technologies for years. Now they had a chance to test everything against a real enemy. "Admiral, we can retrofit existing ships with new weapon systems within days rather than months," Dr. Cole explained as he spread technical diagrams across the conference table. "The modular design philosophy we adopted 5 years ago will allow rapid upgrades." General Peter Brooks was responsible for overall fleet operations and logistics. His job was to figure out how to move 800 ships across interstellar space and keep them supplied during combat operations. "The biggest challenge is coordination," General Brooks explained to the assembled staff. "We have ships from a dozen different nations using different communication systems and tactical doctrines. We need a unified command structure." Admiral Helen Stone was chosen to command the Terra Fleet because of her experience during the Mars colonial wars 15 years earlier. She had proven that smaller forces could defeat larger ones through superior tactics and coordination. Her flagship would be the UES Retribution, the most advanced vessel in Earth's fleet. "Our advantages are mobility, coordination, and adaptability," Admiral Stone explained to her senior staff during their first briefing. According to the intelligence from Captain Rodriguez, the hegemony relies on overwhelming force and fear. They are not used to fighting opponents who can think creatively. Dr. Rachel Murphy coordinated with civilian research institutions around the world to develop new technologies specifically designed to counter hegemony advantages. Universities and private companies worked around the clock to solve problems they had never imagined. We need electronic warfare capabilities, Dr. Murphy explained during a video conference with research teams on 6 continents. The enemy appears to use centralized command and control systems. If we can disrupt their communications, we can turn their size advantage against them. The weapon development program proceeded at an incredible pace. Dr. Cole's team worked with international partners to design new systems that could be manufactured and installed within the tight deadline. Every major industrial center on Earth contributed to the effort. The Quantum Disruptor Project was the most ambitious undertaking. Dr. Cole's team had been experimenting with quantum interference technology for years, but had never found a practical application. The hegemony threat provided the motivation to push the technology beyond its current limits. If this works, we can disable enemy ships without destroying them completely, Dr. Cole explained to Admiral Stone. The quantum field will interfere with their power systems and computers while leaving the hull intact. Captain Danny Murphy commanded the destroyer UES Defiant and would lead one of the Terra Fleet's task forces. He had studied every piece of intelligence about hegemony tactics and ship designs. His analysis would shape human strategy for the coming battle. The enemy formations are designed for siege warfare, Captain Murphy explained during a strategy meeting. They positioned their largest ships in a defensive shell around their command vessels. This makes them powerful, but also predictable. Captain Lavra Kim commanded the cruiser UES Liberty and would lead another task force. Her specialty was electronic warfare and communication systems. She would be responsible for jamming hegemony communications during the battle. Their command structure appears to be highly centralized, Captain Kim observed. Local commanders show little initiative without direct orders from their superiors. If we can cut their communications, individual ships will become much less effective. The fleet assembly took place in orbit around Earth and the Moon. Ships arrived daily from naval bases around the solar system. The sight of so many vessels gathering in one place was unprecedented in human history. Captain Tony Davis commanded the heavy cruiser U's Vengeance and would coordinate with alien resistance forces on the ground. His ship carried advanced communication equipment that could maintain contact with Velani survivors during the battle. We need to let the Velani know help is coming, Captain Davis explained. Their morale is critical. If they give up hope, we might arrive to find nothing left to save. The logistics challenge was enormous. General Brooks had to organize fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and food supplies for 800 ships and over 200,000 crew members. Everything had to be loaded and ready within 12 days. Commander Kate Stevens returned from the Velani system with detailed intelligence about enemy capabilities and current tactical situations. Her report confirmed that time was running out for the alien civilization. The Velani have maybe 5 days left, Stevens reported to Admiral Stone. Their underground bunkers are holding, but the hegemony is systematically destroying everything on the surface. Soon there will be nothing left to save. Captain Mike Baker commanded the destroyer UES Stryker and had volunteered to lead the most dangerous mission of the operation. His task force would penetrate deep into enemy formations to target hegemony command ships. Speed and surprise are our only advantages, Captain Baker explained to his crew. We go in fast, hit the command ships, and get out before they can respond effectively. Dr. Cole's quantum disruptors were installed on Admiral Stone's flagship and 3 other heavy cruisers. The weapons had never been tested in combat, but computer simulations suggested they would be devastatingly effective against hegemony technology. Remember, these are experimental weapons, Dr. Cole warned Admiral Stone. We think they will work, but we cannot be certain until we try them in actual combat. The Terra fleet conducted final preparations in the outer solar system, where their activities could not be observed from Earth. The assembled force represented the combined military might of humanity, united for the first time in history against a common threat. President Carter addressed the fleet commanders in a message broadcast to every ship. Her words would be remembered as long as humanity traveled among the stars. You carry with you the hopes and prayers of every person on Earth, President Carter said. You go not just to save an alien civilization, but to announce to the galaxy that humanity will not tolerate the destruction of innocent life. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and looked out at the massive fleet assembled around her flagship. 800 ships from a dozen nations hung in space, ready to make the jump to hyperspace. Each vessel carried humanity's determination to help those who could not help themselves. All ships report ready for hyperspace transit, reported the fleet communications officer. Admiral Stone gave the order that would send humanity to war among the stars for the first time. The Terra fleet engaged their hyperspace engines simultaneously and disappeared from the solar system in flashes of brilliant light. Behind them, Earth continued its normal rotation while 6 billion people waited for news from a battle that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The message they had sent was simple but powerful. When someone calls for help, humans answer the call. The Terra fleet raced through hyperspace toward a confrontation that would test everything humanity believed about courage, sacrifice, and the duty to protect innocent life. In the Velani system, the countdown to extinction continued while an entire planet waited for salvation that might never come. Admiral Helen Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as the Terra fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they found was worse than anyone had expected. The hegemony had brought in massive reinforcements. Since Captain Rodriguez's first report, over 400 enemy ships now surrounded the dying Velani homeworld. Fleet Status Report. Admiral Stone, ordered as her communications officer, established contact with the 800 human vessels spread across the system. All ships have arrived safely, reported Commander Sarah Blake from her position at the Fleet Coordination Station. We have confirmed contact with Captain Rodriguez and the Advanced Reconnaissance Force. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system from her position near the outer planets. The UES Frontier had spent 3 weeks conducting guerrilla strikes against hegemony supply lines while gathering intelligence about enemy capabilities and weaknesses. Admiral, the situation is critical, Captain Rodriguez reported. The Velani have less than 18 hours before their final underground shelters are breached. The hegemony has been using drilling machines to reach the deepest bunkers. Lieutenant Sam Torres had mapped every hegemony ship in the system during his weeks of observation. His intelligence would be crucial for the human attack plan. He transmitted detailed formation charts to Admiral Stone's tactical staff. The enemy has organized into 7 main battle groups, Torres reported. Each group contains approximately 60 ships, ranging from small patrol vessels to massive dreadnoughts. Their command ships are positioned in the center of each formation. Admiral Stone studied the tactical display, showing both human and enemy positions. The hegemony fleet outnumbered the Terra fleet by almost 2 to 1. In traditional fleet combat, humanity would have no chance of victory. But Admiral Stone had no intention of fighting a traditional battle. All task force commanders, this is Admiral Stone, she announced on the fleet command frequency. We will implement Plan Delta. All units move to assigned positions and await the attack signal. The Terra fleet split into multiple smaller task forces, each commanded by experienced officers who understood their role in the complex battle plan. Captain Danny Murphy led Task Force Alpha, consisting of fast destroyers and frigates. Their job was to penetrate enemy formations and create chaos. Captain Lara Kim commanded Task Force Bravo with ships equipped for electronic warfare. Her vessels would jam hegemony communications and disrupt their command structure. Captain Tony Davis led Task Force Charlie, responsible for protecting the main battle line during the engagement. Captain Mike Baker commanded the most dangerous assignment with Task Force Delta. His ships would make direct attacks on hegemony command vessels while the enemy was distracted by the other task forces. This mission required perfect timing and incredible courage. Task Force Alpha, begin your approach, Admiral Stone ordered. Captain Murphy's destroyers accelerated toward the nearest hegemony battle group, using their superior speed to close the distance quickly. The human ships used electronic countermeasures to confuse enemy sensors while approaching from multiple angles simultaneously. The hegemony commanders had never faced opponents who could coordinate such complex maneuvers without constant communication. Captain Murphy's flagship U.S. Defiant led the charge against the outer edge of the enemy formation. His ships fired missiles and energy weapons while maintaining high speed to avoid return fire. The attack caught the hegemony forces completely by surprise. Multiple enemy contacts approaching from Sector 7, reported to hegemony communications. Officer in a transmission, intercepted by Captain Kim's electronic warfare specialists. Request immediate reinforcement. But the reinforcement request never reached the hegemony command ships because Captain Kim's jammers were blocking all enemy communications in that sector. The isolated hegemony ships had to fight without coordination or support from their main fleet. Commander Kate Stevens led a squadron of destroyers in a flanking attack that caught 3 hegemony cruisers away from their protective formation. Her ships used superior maneuverability to stay behind the enemy vessels, where their heavy weapons could not target effectively. Enemy ship disabled, reported Stevens as her squadron destroyed the engines of a hegemony cruiser. The vessel is drifting and unable to maneuver. The first phase of the battle was going according to plan, but Admiral Stone knew the real test would come when the fillet hegemony forces recognized the threat and began to respond with their full strength. The enemy had been surprised, but they were not defeated. Admiral, the Central Hegemony Command Group is moving to engage our main battle line, reported her tactical officer. The largest enemy ships were advancing toward Admiral Stone's position with enough firepower to destroy half the human fleet. Task Force Delta, execute your attack now, Admiral Stone ordered. Captain Baker's ships had been waiting in the shadow of a large asteroid for exactly this moment. As the main hegemony force moved away from their command ships, Baker struck. The U.S. Striker led 12 destroyers in a high-speed attack run directly at the heart of the enemy fleet. Their target was the massive command dreadnought that coordinated hegemony operations across the entire system. Incoming missiles detected, reported Baker's weapons officer as the hegemony command ship began firing defensive weapons. The human destroyers weaved between the incoming fire while maintaining their attack course. Captain Baker's ships fired everything they had at the enemy command vessel. Missiles, energy beams, and kinetic projectiles struck the massive ship from far. Multiple angles. The hegemony dreadnought staggered under the assault but continued fighting. Direct hit on their main communication array, reported one of Baker's squadron commanders. The command ship has lost contact with most of their fleet. This was exactly what Admiral Stone had been waiting for. With their communications disrupted, the hegemony fleet began making the tactical errors that human commanders could exploit. Individual ship captains made decisions without knowing what their allies were doing. All task forces begin general engagement, Admiral Stone ordered. The Terra fleet abandoned stealth and began attacking enemy formations from every direction simultaneously. The quantum disruptors on Admiral Stone's flagship had been charging power for hours. Dr. Cole's experimental weapons were about to face their first combat test against real enemy targets. "Quantum disruptors ready to fire," reported the weapons officer on the UES Retribution. Admiral Stone selected 3 of the largest hegemony command ships as her targets. "Fire all disruptors," she ordered. Invisible waves of quantum energy raced across space and struck the targeted enemy vessels. For several seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then the massive hegemony ships began losing power as their computer systems failed and their engines shut down. "All 3 targets are disabled," reported the tactical officer with amazement in his voice. "Their power cores are offline, and they are drifting without propulsion." The effect on the hegemony fleet was immediate and devastating. Without their command ships providing coordination, the enemy formations began to collapse into chaos. Individual captains tried to maintain their positions, but they could not communicate effectively with their allies. Captain Kim's electronic warfare ships intensified their jamming efforts, ensuring that any hegemony attempts to restore communications would fail. The enemy fleet was now fighting as hundreds of individual ships rather than a coordinated force. Human task forces exploited every opportunity created by the confusion. Captain Murphy's destroyers struck at isolated enemy vessels, while Captain Davis's cruisers provided covering fire. The superior human coordination began to tell as enemy ships were destroyed or disabled one by one. "Hegemony fleet is attempting to withdraw," reported Captain Torres from his observation post in the outer system. "Approximately 100 enemy ships are breaking away from the main engagement." Admiral Stone faced a critical decision. She could pursue the retreating ships and try to destroy the entire enemy fleet, or she could focus on saving the Vellani homeworld before their underground shelters were breached. "All ships, ignore the retreating vessels," she ordered. "Our priority is the protection of Vellani civilians. Task Force Charlie, begin orbital bombardment of hegemony ground installations." Captain Davis led his heavy cruisers in attacks against the drilling machines that were threatening the last Vellani shelters. Human precision weapons destroyed the enemy equipment while avoiding damage to the underground bunkers. The battle continued for 6 more hours as human forces systematically eliminated remaining hegemony resistance in the system. By the end of the engagement, over half the enemy fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors fled toward unknown destinations deeper in hegemony space. "System secure," reported Admiral Stone to the assembled fleet commanders. "Begin search and rescue. Operations for Vellani survivors." Dr. Elena Vasquez re-established communication with the Vellani leadership as human ships moved into orbit around their homeworld. The aliens were alive, but their civilization lay in ruins. Years of rebuilding would be needed to restore their society. "Unknown saviors, we cannot express our gratitude," transmitted the Vellani leader from his underground bunker. "You have given us hope when we thought all was lost." News of humanity's victory at Kepler 442 spread across the galaxy through the quantum communication networks that the hegemony had built to control their empire. The same systems they used to coordinate their conquests now carried word of their first major defeat to every corner of known space. Ambassador Claire Jackson arrived in the Vellani system aboard the diplomatic vessel Use Harmony 3 weeks after the battle. Her mission was to establish formal relations with the first alien species humanity had encountered. She carried with her the hopes of 6 billion humans who wanted to build a peaceful future among the stars. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent those 3 weeks learning the Vellani language and culture in preparation for the diplomatic meetings. Translation technology that had started with decoding a desperate distress call was now sophisticated enough to handle complex negotiations. "Ambassador Jackson, welcome to our world," said Elder Keth, the senior Vellani leader, as Claire stepped off her shuttle onto the surface of the alien homeworld. "Your species has given us the greatest gift possible: continued existence." The Vellani were tall, graceful beings with skin that seemed to shimmer with different colors depending on their emotions. They had large eyes that appeared to see everything, and voices that carried musical undertones, even when speaking of serious matters. Elder Keth led Ambassador Jackson through the ruins of the Vellani capital city. The destruction was extensive, but repair work had already begun. Human engineering teams were working alongside Vellani technicians to rebuild critical infrastructure. "We have something to offer in return for your help," Elder Keth explained as they walked through a partially restored research facility. "Our scientists have developed sensor technology that can detect hegemony ships from much greater distances than your current systems allow." Claire understood immediately why this technology would be valuable. The ability to detect enemy forces before they arrived at a target system would give defenders crucial time to prepare or evacuate. Admiral Kevin Walsh had established a permanent command center in the Vellani system to coordinate humanity's expanding military presence. Intelligence reports were arriving daily from across the galaxy as news of the hegemony defeat encouraged other species to share information about their oppressors. "We now have contact with 17 different alien civilizations," Admiral Walsh reported during a secure transmission to Earth Command. 12 of them are currently under hegemony occupation. The others are hiding in remote systems, hoping to avoid detection. President Lisa Carter had authorized the creation of the Terran Defense Initiative, a permanent military organization designed to protect human interests and their alien allies. Captain Rodriguez was promoted to admiral and given command of the UFO, New Alien Protection Division. "Our mission is simple," Admiral Rodriguez explained to her staff during their first briefing. "We help any species that asks for our assistance against hegemony aggression. We also work to build a coalition of free worlds that can stand together against tyranny." The hegemony leadership was struggling to understand how their seemingly unstoppable empire had been defeated by a previously unknown species. Emergency meetings were held in their hidden fortress worlds as commanders tried to explain how they had lost over 200 ships to inferior numbers. Supreme Commander Vorthik stood before the Hegemony High Council and tried to explain the disaster at Kepler 442. He had commanded hegemony forces for over 30 years and had never experienced anything like the human attack. "The enemy used tactics we have never encountered," Vorthik reported to the assembled council members. "They coordinated multiple simultaneous attacks while disrupting our communications. Our traditional advantages in firepower and numbers were neutralized." The High Council demanded immediate retaliation against the humans, but Vorthik knew that would be impossible in the short term. The hegemony had lost too many ships, and their remaining forces were needed to maintain control over existing conquests. Intelligence reports from Commander Barnes on Earth revealed that 3 hegemony client species had already declared independence after learning about the human victory. The Korthani, the Zilani, and the Tefan had all announced they would no longer serve their hegemony masters. "The rebellion is spreading faster than we anticipated," Commander Barnes reported to Admiral Walsh. "Each successful revolt encourages others to consider resistance. The hegemony is fighting fires on multiple fronts." Dr. Rachel Murphy had established joint research programs with Vellani scientists to develop new technologies that combined human innovation with alien knowledge. The partnerships were producing remarkable advances in faster-than-light travel, defensive systems, and communication methods. "We have made a breakthrough in hyperspace efficiency," Dr. Murphy announced during a video conference with research teams on Earth. Vellani gravitational field theory, combined with our quantum drive technology, can reduce travel time between star systems by 40%. The improved hyperspace technology would allow human fleets to respond more quickly to calls for help from distant alien civilizations. It also meant that trade and communication between allied worlds would become much more practical. Captain Mike Baker had been assigned to lead the liberation of the Corthany homeworld, which was still under hegemony. Occupation, despite the declared independence. His task force of 30 ships would test whether human tactics could work against prepared hegemony defenses. Remember, the Corthany have been slaves for over 15 years. Captain Baker briefed his squadron commanders. They have important intelligence about hegemony operations, but they are also desperate and might take unnecessary risks. The liberation of Corthany Prime was humanity's second major engagement against hegemony forces. Unlike the battle at Kepler 442, this time the enemy was prepared for human tactics and had modified their formations accordingly. Captain Baker's attack succeeded, but at a higher cost than the first engagement. 3 human ships were destroyed, and 7 others were severely damaged. The Corthany were freed, but the price reminded everyone that the hegemony was learning from their defeats. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been appointed as the first director of interspecies communications. Her job was to establish contact with alien civilizations and determine which ones might be willing to join the growing alliance against the hegemony. We have received responses from 43 different species, Dr. Vasquez reported during a meeting of the Alliance Council. 22 are interested in formal membership. 15 want military protection, but prefer to remain neutral, and 6 are still too frightened to commit to anything. The Alliance Council met on a space station built specifically for diplomatic purposes in a neutral system between Earth and the Vellani homeworld. Representatives from 7 species gathered to discuss strategy for dealing with the hegemony threat. Elder Keth represented the Vellani, while Admiral Rodriguez spoke for humanity. The Corthany sent their war leader Sethric, who had personally fought hegemony forces for over a decade. 3 other species sent observers to evaluate whether joining the alliance would be worth the risk. The hegemony grows weaker with each passing month, Sethric reported during one council session. Their control over occupied systems requires constant force. As more worlds rebel, they must spread their fleets thinner to maintain order. Captain Lara Kim had been promoted to admiral and given command of all electronic warfare operations for the Alliance. Her ships were working to establish a galaxy-wide communication network that the hegemony could not intercept or jam. Secure. Communication is the foundation of everything we are trying to accomplish, Admiral Kim explained to the Alliance Council. If member species can coordinate their actions without fear of hegemony interference, we can support multiple liberation efforts simultaneously. The Communication Network project required cooperation between human engineers and alien specialists from 6 different civilizations. Each species contributed their unique knowledge to create a system more advanced than anything previously imagined. Within 6 months of the victory at Kepler 442, the balance of power in the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. The hegemony found themselves fighting defensive actions on dozens of fronts, while their former victims organized into an effective resistance movement. Admiral Helen Stone had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Alliance forces and was coordinating military operations across multiple star systems. Her headquarters moved constantly to avoid hegemony attempts to locate and destroy the Alliance leadership. "We are winning," Admiral Stone announced during a secure transmission to Earth. "The hegemony empire is collapsing faster than anyone thought possible. Their strategy of ruling through fear only works when they appear unstoppable." Captain Tony Davis commanded the Alliance task force responsible for rescuing populations from hegemony slave worlds. His ships had liberated over 2 million beings from 7 different species in the past 4 months. Every person we save becomes a potential ally, Captain Davis reported. The former slaves know hegemony weaknesses better than anyone. They are eager to help us destroy their former masters. The final broadcast came from Admiral Rodriguez as Alliance forces prepared for the largest liberation operation yet attempted.